I grew up in Harmony Creek, a tiny town in rural coastal Carolina, where the main events don't happen on the streets but behind tightly shut blinds. Everyone knows everyone, and people whisper whenever you walk past. But no matter how it sounds, this is where my real story began. Not with a boyfriend, not with a job, but with a horse, and with myself. My name is Savannah. I'm 22, a student at the Veterinary Academy in Raleigh. This summer, I was interning at an old stable near Harmony Creek, owned by an elderly acquaintance of my mother. He kept purebred Accoltech horses. Among them was one special one, Zephyr silvery, with a proud neck and a piercing gaze, as if he understood more than a simple animal should. I remember that evening. It was a scorching, drawn-out July. I stayed in the stable late, deliberately avoiding the house where Mom constantly nagged me. The stable smelled of dust, hay, and the salty sweat of the animals, and also of freedom. I wore a light, bright dress with a high neckline, but the thin fabric couldn't hide the curves of my body. On my feet were rubber boots and dusty knee-high socks, rolled up above my knees to avoid sticking to the saddle. Zephyr snorted when I entered. He already knew it was time for the talk. My ritual. I would sit on the hay nearby. He would lower his head, and we would breathe into each other. His warm breath touched my cheeks, and there was no need for words or comfort. Only that rare feeling of safety. I stroked his withers, my fingers playing with his mane, braiding invisible knots into it. My grandmother used to say, "That connects the souls." My hand slid lower, feeling the muscles, not as a veterinarian, but as a woman who was just beginning to notice strength, attraction, and nuances. It excited me how he reacted, tensing his back, flinching at the touch. It wasn't crude or intimate. It was almost human. That evening, I took off my silver pendant, a gift from my long-gone father, and hung it on a small hook. "Now this will be our secret, Zephyr," I whispered. He nudged my chest, right where my heart was, as if answering, "Keep it." I didn't notice 2 hours fly by. I sat on the straw, pressed against his side, in a silence broken only by his breathing and the occasional thump of his tail. And then the click of the door. A flash of light from a phone. Someone walked in. I jumped up, adjusting my dress. It was Caleb, my friend Chloe's younger brother. 17. Too curious. His eyes widened when he saw me next to Zephyr, half undressed, with my socks down and my hair a mess. He didn't say anything, just exhaled. "You talked to him?" I didn't answer. I just took the pendant, unhooked it, put it back around my neck, and whispered to Zephyr, "It's okay, no one saw us." But inside, an alarm bell was already ringing. This was the first crack. After that evening with Caleb, I didn't go to the stable for several days. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't know what he had seen. Or perhaps, what he understood. In Harmony Creek, rumors spread faster than the local Wi-Fi. I felt it. The glances on the street, the strange pauses. When I went to the drugstore, even Mom seemed to talk less to me. She didn't know anything, but she sensed something. I tried to distract myself. I put on a short denim wrap dress, deliberately bright platform sandals as armor. I did my makeup, straightened my hair. But it all looked like a mask, because inside, I was shaking. And in that tremor, there was not only shame but also the desire to see him again. When I returned to the stable, everything was as before. The same smell, the same twilight, and Zephyr, stirred by my approach. Only inside me, everything was different. My steps were uncertain, my palms damp. He immediately nudged my chest, as if seeking confirmation. "You came back. Everything is okay." I spoke to him in a whisper, as if we were truly in a conspiracy. About how hard it was to be myself in a town where everyone knew who I ate dinner with and what time I washed my hair. About wanting someone who didn't demand, didn't accuse, didn't force me to be convenient. My hands slid down his neck again. But now I did it with restraint, because the image of Caleb kept spinning in my head. How he looked, as if he had seen right into me. And though he hadn't said a word, it was worse than any report. The next morning, when I went to the pharmacy, the old pharmacist, Mrs. Gable, looked at me strangely. Not angrily, but with pity. "Be careful out there," she said, handing me the iodine and a bandage. "With what?" She shrugged. "Youth runs fast, but people's tongues run faster." I left with burning cheeks. I had no bruises or marks, but everyone behaved as if they had already seen surveillance footage that didn't exist. The following evening, I came to the stable in a new guise, a wide, long-sleeved cotton dress and a scarf on my head, as if trying to hide even from myself. I sat next to Zephyr, not touching him, just silent. Yet he lay down next to me. His body warm and calm, his breathing even as if he meant to say, "Be quiet but be near." Suddenly, the door creaked again. I froze. But this time, it wasn't Caleb. It was Ryan. He was a year older than me, working at the vet clinic in the county center. He had come to help with vaccinations. Tall, tanned, with hands that could take hold and never let go. He didn't say a word, just stood opposite me and watched. Then he said quietly, "You understand, right? That horses feel what we're afraid to admit." I didn't answer, just clenched my hands into fists. He came closer, leaned down, and subtly touched my scarf. "You're not alone, but you must be careful, Savannah." And he disappeared as quickly as he appeared. That night, I took off the pendant and put it in Zephyr's manger. "Keep it until I become myself again," I whispered. He snorted softly, in his own way. I realized for the first time that Zephyr didn't just have eyes, he had a soul. When August arrived, the heat in Harmony Creek became viscous and heavy, like honey. The day started in a haze and ended in a sticky sunset where even the flies flew sluggishly. I felt everything around me holding its breath, just as I was. The rumors in town hadn't died down but had taken the drawn-out form of whispers behind my back. Mom never asked anything directly, but she increasingly inserted barbed phrases like, "The horses will invite you to your wedding soon," or, "Your eyes look like that mare's, always on guard." But I couldn't stop going to Zephyr. It wasn't a physical dependence, but an emotional one. He offered what I lacked in people: acceptance, silence, sincerity. He demanded no explanations, set no conditions. He simply was, and that was enough. That evening, I didn't come alone. Ryan was with me. He insisted, saying he wanted to make sure Zephyr was all right. I wore a white linen dress in the 60s style, with a mandarin collar and buttons reaching almost to my chin. Underneath, thin stockings hidden by the hem, and soft laced flats. My hair was pulled back into a tight bun. Deliberately chaste. Deliberately not me. Ryan walked silently, but the tension between us grew. He noticed the pendant in the manger, picked it up, and turned to me. "Do you often leave your sacred things among animals?" "Only if they hear me," I said, holding his gaze. He came closer, placed the pendant in my palm, and closed my fingers over it with his hand. Warm, strong, smelling of iodine and hay. "You know he's attached to you more than just as an owner," his voice dropped lower. "And you are too. I've seen the way you look." I sharply pulled away, though my body under the dress had already reacted faster than my mind. I heard my heart pound. Mine or his, it didn't matter. Zephyr watched us from the stall, silent, almost judging. "And what are you going to do now?" I asked, looking boldly into Ryan's eyes. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked into Zephyr's stall and began carefully examining his slightly limping leg. I watched his movements, precise, calm, as if nothing had passed between us. Only his hands betrayed him. He touched the animal like a living canvas, gently but with strength. In that moment, I felt a strange jealousy. I couldn't explain it, but it was there, and it was frightening. When he left, I stayed. Zephyr turned his head toward me, and I swore I saw concern in his eyes. I sat down next to him, curled up my legs, and let my hair down, the bun falling apart. The buttons at my throat came undone on their own. I felt suffocated. My body was too confined by the boundaries of propriety. I touched his neck, and he nudged my shoulder, as if demanding, "Tell me what's happening." I didn't tell him. I only whispered, "You are mine, aren't you?" He didn't answer. But when I pressed my cheek against him, I felt his breathing change, and I changed too. Every day, events began to unfold like in dreams, where you don't know if you've woken up or are still asleep. After that meeting with Ryan in the stable, I started hearing footsteps behind me. Not real ones, but imagined ones, as if I were running from myself. I tried to be invisible. I got into the habit of visiting Zephyr deep in the night, when even the dogs in the village were silent. I put on an old sports jacket over my nightgown, and thick tights underneath to keep warm. On my feet, warm boots. At first glance, no eroticism. But the nightgown fabric was so thin that I felt every drop of air on my skin. And that excited me more than anything else. The stable lived its own life at night. Shadows from the lantern stretched along the walls like long fingers. Horses snorted in their sleep, shifting their hooves, but one of them, mine, was always awake. He waited. Zephyr seemed to know I would come. I no longer needed words. I just walked up to him, pressed my forehead to his muzzle, and stroked his neck. This time, he sharply turned his head and nudged me a little harder than usual, as if angry. I understood why, Ryan. He was coming more often than necessary. He stayed for too long, asked too many questions about Zephyr and about me. I caught his looks, the kind that makes your stomach clench, even if you're standing in a jacket in the cold. The next evening, Ryan invited me for a walk. Just a walk. We walked along the dirt road, where apple cores and empty cigarette packs lay on the roadside. He was silent for a long time, and then suddenly he asked, "Who do you choose, Savannah? Him or me?" I didn't understand at first. Who? Him. He stopped, turned to me, and touched my cheek. Don't pretend. You visit him like a lover. You stroke him not as a vet. I know that look. I was looking at you that way myself. And I am looking at you that way now. My throat went dry. I wanted to leave, but he grabbed my hand. Not roughly, but decisively. I don't judge, you know. I strangely like it. It's like a forbidden thing you want to try. But I need to know, are you with him, or do you still want to be with someone who can hold you when you shake? He leaned in for a kiss, and I didn't pull away. His lips were hot and wet. He kissed me as if afraid I would disappear. His hand squeezed my waist through the thin nightgown under the jacket. And I felt the sky shake. Or maybe it was me. We stopped. "Tomorrow night," he said, "I'll come to the stable too. I want to watch, not him but you, when you are real." He left, and I stood on the road alone. Between two worlds, between two attractions, between two taboos. I didn't sleep the entire next night. I lay in my room with the window taped shut, listening to the creak of the beams and counting my heartbeats. It was beating unevenly, like an old alarm clock whose hand someone had secretly moved forward an hour. I knew everything would change today. I came to the stable at midnight. I wore a dark silk dress with long sleeves, form-fitting but modest. Underneath, thin lace lingerie I'd bought myself in secret for my birthday. Barefoot, the dress dragging in the sawdust. I felt like a witch, or a victim, or both at once. Zephyr snorted when he heard my steps. He was restless. His eyes gleamed in the dark. I ran my hand over his flanks, hot and damp. He seemed to know what awaited us. "We are not alone tonight," I whispered. The door opened. Ryan walked in slowly, silently. He wore a black sweater, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on me. He wasn't looking at Zephyr. He watched me stand there, fragile barefoot, my breath escaping my chest like a trapped bird. "You want me to understand?" "Yes," he said, coming closer. "You want me to see you become yourself next to him?" I nodded. He stood at the entrance to the stall, not entering, just watching. I walked up to Zephyr and placed my palms on his forehead. He was breathing heavily. I stroked his neck, his chest, pressing my entire body against him, as if he were my earth, my home, my storm. I felt the skin tighten beneath the fabric of the dress. I knew Ryan saw my every movement, every shaky breath, every curving line of my back, and I allowed him to. At some point, he couldn't stand it. He walked up and stood behind my back. I felt his breath mingle with mine. His hand rested on my waist. "I can't just watch. I want to be a part of this, Savannah." I turned. His lips found mine. We kissed, standing in the stall, pressed against Zephyr's hot side. I felt the boundaries between mind and body, between passion and shame blur. Ryan stroked my arms, my back, whispering, "I don't understand who you are, but I don't want you to belong only to him." Zephyr whinnied anxiously. He pushed us away from him, as if he felt a threat. Or jealousy. I fell to the ground. The dress tore at the side, revealing pale skin and pale lace. Ryan rushed to me, wanting to help, but suddenly, a crack. A squeak. And light. Mom was standing in the doorway in her robe, with a flashlight. With her were Caleb and a neighbor, and someone else. Half the town. My God, she only managed to exhale. I sat on the floor. Ryan stood over me. Zephyr was wildly stamping his hoof on the ground. It's not what you think, I whispered. But it was exactly what they thought, and maybe even worse. By morning, I was gone from the house and the town. I left in the night, barefoot, with a dress soaked in sawdust and sweat, through the woods, across the field, toward the train station. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew one thing: I couldn't stay any longer. A month later, Mom received a letter. Inside was the silver pendant with an inscription on the back. I didn't choose, because I was chosen.